Welcome to the podcast from Headhunters Northwest. Headhunters Northwest. Specialized recruiting, specialized approach, where we take you behind the scenes into our customers' businesses. For over 20 years, Headhunters Northwest has served the global defense, small arms, and shooting sectors worldwide. Listen in as we discuss the inner workings of our USA and international customers. Headhunters Northwest, finding you the best heads for business.
Welcome to the Headhunters Northwest podcast. This is really fun. This is something that I have never done. Nick, who is going to be our guest here. Nick, is it Nielson?
Yeah, it is. You nailed it, actually.
Okay. Nick and I met very recently at the HumanX conference that some of you who know me might be aware of, or if you follow us on social media, you've seen my posts. It's an AI conference, and Nick and I met there, which is so cool because I don't know how our paths would have crossed, but poor Nick, I probably scared you to death when I said, "What do you do?" And he says, "Well, I'm with this company. Here's what we do." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I need to talk to you. My customers really need to know about this service." And I think probably, thank goodness you weren't put off in your salesman and you can deal with it. But
not at all.
I after we talked at lunch about the product, which we're going to get into, I asked Nick if he would consider doing a podcast because I think our listeners and our viewers would love to hear about this tool.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was a pleasure chatting with you. And I, the way you came up to me at we did a round table or like a conversation. It was great. It was a great conversation. And I appreciate you showing interest. So it's always really exciting to kind of chat about these types of things.
Well, my customers who are in the manufacturing industry, they're service companies and they're distributors, but by and large manufacturing, and they have small and large and a lot of variety in their sales teams. And this is what was so interesting. So this podcast is going to be helpful to, I think, HR, payroll, sales leaders that are all trying to figure out how do we manage the compensation. We've got people internationally, we've got internal sales, we've got sales reps.
Yeah.
And this is somewhat, and that's the limit to know about what I know about your product. So why don't you take it from here and tell us the name of the company and tell us what you do for your company. And then maybe you can tell us a little bit about what this amazing service is, because it is that.
100%. So the company's called ZenCentiv. We've been around for about 2.5, 3 years now. The founders and the founding members of the team actually kind of built it, spent a lot of time building a robust calculation engine or a lot of our product that kind of fits on it today. And so I've only been there for the last 6 or 7 months and hired as the lead salesperson to kind of drive our go-to-market strategy. And so basically what we do is we're a powerful no-code sales compensation platform that's tailored for both mid-market and enterprise level organizations. And then kind of the 3 areas of focus I'll mention, because I think it's relevant when we talk about our product, is I think the first is that we streamline calculations so that a lot of organizations who might be using Excel spreadsheets essentially don't have to do that anymore. The second piece is actually we increase visibility for commission payouts for like reps or third parties and the executive team who are looking for high level insights. That is such a big aspect or value. Yeah. And then the last piece as well is we allow plan designers to easily implement these commission plans. So when you think, Shaylene, you mentioned HR or maybe like RevOps, even the office of the CFO, when they go through the process of like implementing new year commission plans, it can be very difficult and very complex. And we can get into that, as it relates to like the manufacturing industry, but we try and make that very simple. So we do a lot of different things, but those are like the big 3 that I kind of tell a lot of our customers.
Yeah. And I didn't really think about that when I said who would be interested in this. Really, I think now I want to modify it. I think it would be the executives because they're the ones who are going to gain the value of the insight. Really, the CROs, the CEOs, the CFOs.
Yes.
They all need to know these numbers and be able to drill down. And a spreadsheet, while I live and die by spreadsheets, that is not going to work very well for what you're trying to get. And I bet inside there you can search and change all that criteria.
100%. I mean, we have, and it's interesting, and happy to chat about this. The one thing that I've started to learn as like working with ZenCentiv is that there's so many different aspects or like personas or like proof points that people kind of are involved in. So like you mentioned, it's the CFO, it's the CEO, it's the RevOps team, it's obviously the whole sales org, and then the HR team as well. So there's a lot of different people who play different roles when you kind of talk about commission. And that, honestly, that's the biggest thing I think I've learned thus far is that, you think like, oh, implement it, set a commission plan, implement it. It's a little more complex than that, given like the stakeholders that are involved in that whole process.
It's very complex. And I only know it from the job offer. Here, from a recruiting perspective, you're putting forth these different candidates. And let's say you decide you want to hire one, you're the hiring manager. Now you've got to put together this offer letter, and everyone's scrambling then to see, does it match up with what we have already going? This sounds like such a great tool from offer letter to even, termination, because it's all right there and you have consistency and you're able to get the data.
And the nice thing is that we can help with that too. I mean, you can imagine we're like using a very specific use case, but like the CRO or the VP of sales needs to send out all these different comp plans. It could be to inside sales reps, outside sales reps, third parties, it doesn't matter. But like having to do that whole process through DocuSign or something like that seems insane. Whereas opposed to we can just send it all within our system instead.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, when you guys are really a startup, I mean, so you just told me that right before we got on camera, you guys are in the process of hiring a couple more people. So obviously it's going really well. Mm-hmm. And really, it sounds like what hasn't no one's had time to do yet is marketing. So this is a product that people don't know anything about yet.
It is. Like one of the reasons I think, and I thank you again for having me just here and chat. One of the reasons I think is just important to do these types of things is to kind of tell people that we exist. We're trying to increase our presence on LinkedIn. We have obviously a website, but attending conferences has been a kind of big focus. Obviously, i.e. HumanX, us meeting at HumanX, but getting out there and just kind of saying, here's how we do things, here's why we're doing them, and why we think we're better than some of the others in the market.
Now, we're only a few minutes into this, and it occurs to me, why don't you tell people what the website is while they're listening to this, if they want to look up the website, while we're talking about this. We will post the link. So if you're listening to this and you can't write it down right now, don't worry. We'll have the link posted on our YouTube channel and then all of the social media posts. And it's also going to be posted on our website at the base of this podcast. So while people are listening, what is the website address?
Yeah, it's ZenCentiv.com, but it's without the E. So it's ZenCentiv.com.
Great. Yeah, I found it very easy to remember, but I might have forgotten about the E till I got the wrong thing.
I totally get it. Sometimes it throws people off too. But.
And if people want to find you because they say, hey, I need some more information and I want to know more about this product, they can reach out to you on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, on LinkedIn, or my email is nick@zencentiv.com as well too. Pretty straightforward. I'm usually pretty active on LinkedIn too. So in this day and age, I feel like everyone's inundated with all these different messages. Even now, I'll still respond to people who are like, oh, I'm pitching my company or something. I'll usually be super helpful in like trying to direct them in the right direction. So yeah, anyway, long story short.
That's kind of who you are though, because you're right there in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
We all know there's lots of money that floats around in Las Vegas.
Yes.
And so you kind of got hooked up with this group early through your interest in investing and your investor contacts. And that's kind of one of the things you're doing personally is growing. You like to grow your network with investors and learn about that world. And I think HumanX, how could you have gone to another place that would have been better for that?
Yeah. Growing up and living in Las Vegas has a lot of, benefits. I think the community, for one, has grown. There's more than 3 million people here now. But as you mentioned, I think me wanting to get involved in like the startup ecosystem and just trying to discover what the startup ecosystem is like in Vegas. And that's honestly how I was introduced to ZenCentiv. So the group called Startup NV is the main backer for ZenCentiv. And I've been around with, just, participating as advisor, founder, investor, you name it. I've been involved in just working with them. And that's ultimately how I got introduced to the CEO and the founding team at ZenCentiv.
So if someone says, man, I want to be Nick, I've always wanted to do that, but I don't know how to get started. Because I think about that too. Like, you came on board to this startup.
Mhm.
What does someone need to know when you're going to work at a startup? What does that day really look like? Because it's not the same as working for a large company.
That's a great question too. I think a lot of it, and it obviously depends on the startup, but speaking from my experience, like I've worked with very early stage companies and like very early stage founders. So I think a lot of, from like a day-to-day basis, a lot of it can be very chaotic, but you have to kind of structure your day and where it has meaning. So even though my days may not look the same, I'll wake up, I'll do the same routine, I'll, work out, and then, go through my meetings and then have deep work in the afternoons. So and that's honestly a lot of how my day structured for a lot of this role and my roles in the past. So, that's,
You've got to be really self-motivated. Like,
yes.
don't you think, for any startup, especially early stage, you have to be willing to get out there and don't be afraid. Just go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the good news is I think there's a lot of people who kind of have that mentality, and, those who really thrive in that. Others who don't go work for, as you mentioned, like bigger companies.
Yeah. How do you, when you're working on your own and I know that you guys are in different locations, right? You don't have a central office physically. Yeah. You guys all live different places. How do you get mentoring? How do you learn to get to those next levels? What do you do as a professional that's looking for these startups that have no structure? How do you grow your career that way?
Yeah, and it's really tough. And, there's a whole cohort of, younger professionals who actually have not had that because of COVID and kind of the remote work environment. But I think, like, if I were to give advice, is you have to network the heck out of it. Work with, and, if you went to university, make, back channel with different alumni. But for me personally, through my first job, one of my first jobs coming out of school, I was lucky enough that the CEO had a friend who was a really good salesperson. And he's a mentor that I've had for like the last 3 or 4 years, just to someone who can kind of teach you what sales looks like, what good practices look like. And then at the end of the day, even more so, it's just to kind of like bounce ideas off of him, I think has been super helpful for me as well.
Well, I have personally found your ability to communicate and your willingness to, and obviously you make a great effort to reply back.
I try
in a timely fashion. We're all super busy, right? But I think that's one of the complaints that I've heard from people that are older, my age, they're older.
Yeah.
And I think when you're talking about folks that are young in their career and you've had COVID, not their fault, how do you learn all of that? What is appropriate? What is, and if you don't have a mentor, you've got to go seek one out. But I think those are really good examples, because I was very impressed. You got back to me. I think you had to wait on me a couple times after I could schedule this thing out.
Yeah. And so apologies about that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's it. Essentially, part of it is kind of like the startup game as well, too.
How are you finding you're doing a really great job of responding back and communication? But how does someone else learn that? And I guess one of my questions was of you that I just thought of. Yeah. What kind of social tools do you use? Meaning, you said that you do use LinkedIn, but what other social networks do you use maybe that I am not aware of or that other people would find helpful?
Gosh, that's actually a really good question. I mean, a lot of young people use like Twitter, X, and Instagram and whatnot. This is very not professional. Like it's like, I try to keep a professional image on that.
What do you use for professional stuff?
LinkedIn, 100%.
LinkedIn. Okay. X has not replaced LinkedIn then.
No, it definitely hasn't. I think, and to be honest, like I'm not super active on Instagram and Twitter and X. I just, scroll through it to catch up with my friends and whatnot. But I think professionally, if I were to give advice to kind of, people who are either coming out of school or coming out of college, building a presence on LinkedIn, I think it does you wonders later.
I didn't even pay you for that. That's like a dream for the dream.
I'm kidding.
I didn't even say anything about, yes, tell them to do that. I do find LinkedIn is my most powerful tool, but I do use other social media channels.
Really?
And I am now actually interested. I probably brought it up because I guess yesterday and the day before I've been working on my own X channel. I had one years ago and just let it sit. And I'm like, I can't manage one more thing.
Yeah.
But I'm finding that to be a much more active platform for executives that I want to reach.
Sure.
And so I am working on that. It's always like anything else. When you first start, you think, oh, great. Now I have nothing on there, but
100%.
It changes so fast.
And I'm sure young people feel the same way when they're first creating their LinkedIn as well. It's the same thing. I think consistency breeds, success on those types of platforms. So I think as long as you're consistently either engaging or posting or what have you, I think that's the best way for a lot of people to continue.
That's a really good point, Nick. I'm doing a recruitment, kind of a non-traditional recruitment. I was working on it before we jumped on this recording, and it's a very junior position that I wouldn't normally work on, but these people need my help. So no one call me for any more of these. But what I'm finding is that these candidates that are college graduates or soon to be college graduates, they have 20 connections or 50 connections. And what do I have? Thousands,
Sure.
And it's because they're just getting started. So don't get discouraged.
Yeah.
I think that was really good point you said that I would not have even thought to bring up.
Yeah.
Don't get discouraged if you're just getting started in that. It is a good tool and it will build over time.
No, I totally agree. And I think that's like with anything that honestly that you do is either skill set, social media, it takes time. And I think as a young working professional, that's one of the tough pills that you have to swallow. A lot of this just takes time. So
yeah, just a little bite every day.
Yes.
So with you, it's such an amazing tool. I'm really excited for people to get in touch with you and learn more about it.
Yeah.
Who do you talk to, do you think, in an organization when you have this tool that can help all these different areas?
Yeah.
Is your contact the CEO or is your contact the Rev Ops person or is it the HR department? I mean, it could be any of those, right?
It definitely could. So the one thing that we were talking about earlier is like the different stakeholders in this commissions process, but there are very specific people that we target. And I'll explain this, but like it's sometimes very difficult. So what we usually target is the commissions managers, or sometimes it's the finance office. Essentially, what we're trying to understand is like who actually owns the function, owns the real pain, or the people who are actually going and calculating the commissions. So what I was trying to say is that it could vary depending on the size of the company. Usually who we like to target are like commissions managers, or sometimes they might be FP&A people. So the office of the CFO is usually kind of the people who manage that function. So like I said before, there are so many different stakeholders, but we try to kind of find a wedge for like the finance piece specifically because we think those are the people who are really understand that pain.
Oh, I think that's brilliant. Those are my kind of people. That's how I started my career, was accounting and finance recruiting.
Exactly. And my previous role was also a salesperson, but I was selling basically accounting and finance services. So one of the things that was one of the nice things of moving from my previous role to this one is that I'm kind of selling to the same persona.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that that the pain points still resonate with me to the same extent. So,
okay. So all the people that listen to this that have CFOs or no CFOs, this is a great tool. I can see it paying for itself. It's really a great tool.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap it up, I'm kind of interested to know if there were any tools that you gathered or learned about at HumanX that you have used.
That's a great question.
I didn't even prep you for that.
Nah, no kidding.
I really threw you to the wolves on this.
That's okay. I'm gonna tell a tool, but I don't think I learned about this at HumanX. It's Bland AI, and it does AI cold calling. I was pretty skeptical to begin with, like if AI cold calling would even work. We've only started, I think, like the last 2 or 3 weeks, so it's still pretty fresh. But I'm surprised how many people have conversations with AI. So that was one of the tools that we've implemented recently
wow.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty amazing. Still TBD on the type of results. So
yeah, that's really cool. What a great thing to mention. I've never heard of that.
Yeah. What about you?
I have been totally impressed with how many AI tools there are. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So I've been practicing with Claude. I really do like Claude. Now I do have I do have the chat, but I really like Claude, and I have used Jasper AI before we went to the conference to help me with marketing and press releases. I found that really helpful. But I have really found a lot of uses for Claude to help me write a better email, or even to help me with even simple social media posts. I just have been learning, though, that I always have to read them. I can see how using these AI tools, you could easily get lazy and cut and paste, and that's foolish, because that's when it's obviously now you're letting it do your work. There's a big difference.
Yeah. And speaking of AI and HumanX too, don't get me wrong, I'm very impressed with some of the tools that these people are building, but at the same time, it's like we've been working with AI tool, or testing out some different AI agents, and at least right now, I'm not super concerned about AI taking my job. So I think they
Yeah. Well, that's what they said, right? It was the year of the agent.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. And yeah, there's a lot of improvements. I don't think there's going to be any of that. However, I did hear on the news yesterday, I believe, or this morning, that Sam's Club is now removing all of their cashiers and
really?
the people at the door. And you're just going to check all of your stuff, and AI is going to know if you got everything, and you won't have they're eliminating people's jobs. So I think that's very sad, and it is what I don't want to see happen.
Yeah, not kidding.
However, those people could be utilized in other jobs.
Totally.
So, I think it's still the jury's out, really. I think that was kind of one of the main discussions, wasn't it? Next was, how does this affect the real humans?
Yeah, no kidding. That is sad here, but also, it'll be interesting to see how it, the efficacy of the AI for those types of things. But
you guys have these self-driving cars there in Las Vegas yet?
We actually have like all 4 major companies. I've got one of my friends who's working there. So Zoox is one, Waymo. I'm not going to be able to name all of them.
Waymo's the one I was thinking of. I didn't even know there were others.
There's like, because I think, once again, I'm going to get this all wrong. I think Amazon has one, Google has one, then Zoox is like some other company, and then there's a 4th. They're not all publicly available to, I guess to the public, for a lack of better terms.
Yeah.
But I know that I see them driving around all the time.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Coming to a town near you. And I figured Las Vegas would be a no-brainer to test them there.
It definitely is. You can see them going back and forth between the resorts. It's, pretty interesting for sure.
Gosh. Well, I have to say that HumanX was amazing, and I'm not even touting them. They're not paying me for any of this. They don't even know who I am. But I would say that that conference changed my life. It was a ridiculous amount of money to go, but look at this. I got to meet you and so many other people, and it opened up my world. And no matter what industry niche someone is in, no matter what you're manufacturing, no matter what it is, there is a tool that can help you and your organization to save money and make money. And I really think this product that you guys have, I have heard more of my customers complain and get frustrated. They don't even know how they're going to deal with these commissions. I just think this is such a gem.
Yeah, 100%. I appreciate you saying that. The one thing I didn't say that I'll just add as well too is that, one thing at ZenCentiv that we're trying to do is actually really embed ourselves with the manufacturing community. We have 2 existing plastics manufacturing clients. They love our solution. And I think, the idea is that we'd be able to roll it out to a lot more people, and kind of the customer base or the listener base that you have, Shaylene. So I'm hoping to have more of these conversations. I'm really hoping that we can, do good for these people.
Oh, yes. There are many manufacturing organizations, I think, within, even if you do a narrow niche like the shooting sectors and the small arms and anything that's being sold with salespeople. I mean, it doesn't matter. There are several hundred million to billions of dollars. I think a company like an L3 Harris, think of what it could do for them. You're talking about over 9 billion, I think now. Well, not maybe today after the stock market, but maybe tomorrow.
Given the day, right? Depending on the.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, I really appreciate it. We're going to wrap up this Headhunters Northwest podcast. I told you listeners, this was going to be unusual, but this is a cool tool. So I would encourage you to reach out to Nick. Not only does he have a great product, but he's just a cool dude altogether. So thank you, Nick, for being on the podcast. What a treat. I've been looking forward to this. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, that'll be it for Headhunters Northwest podcast. Until next time. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Headhunters Northwest podcast. Specialized recruiting, specialized approach. You can reach out at headhuntersnw.com or call 605-600-1709. Join us again next week as we look behind the curtain into the global defense, small arms, and shooting sectors. Headhunters Northwest, finding you the best heads for business.